Alright, ladies and gentlemen of my subscriber base. So today, it crossed my mind that Sony is doing something that really annoys me, but also I think it's just a really stupid business decision. So, my PlayStation 3s, my first one was pretty good for reliability, but eventually it got the yellow light of death. So, I ended up getting a second one. My first one was an old 80GB one, the one with 4 USB ports, and it could play PlayStation 2 games and PlayStation 1 games, in addition to PlayStation 3. So the replacement one that I got was a 60GB one, and all of those are backwards compatible. So these are older consoles, especially by the time I got the second one, it was probably 2011. So the console was like 3 or 4 years old. It turns out it had been refurbished, and it had had the yellow light of death before. So of course, a couple years later it gets the yellow light of death again, and that one's busted. So eventually, and this was this past summer, I got a third PlayStation 3, another old 80GB one that's backwards compatible, and plays PlayStation 2 games. And I got off eBay, I got it pretty cheap for like $130. But that was one of the cheapest ones. I'd been watching like a hawk. It took me a few days to find one, but I got one for a good price. And then it hit me. How much money has Sony lost because of that? Like, how many people would be willing to buy a brand new, backwards compatible PlayStation 3? Especially because the technology probably wouldn't cost them that much now. I mean, you're basically putting a PlayStation 2 inside the PlayStation 3. It shouldn't cost all that much. And I was just looking today at the average prices, not the lowest prices, but the average prices for 60 and 80GB backwards compatible PlayStation 3s on eBay. And they're both averaging a little over $200 right now, which is pretty impressive for consoles that are now, what, 7+ years old? When did they stop making the 60 gig? Like 2008, 2007? So we'll just say like a 7-year-old console, possibly 8, because some of them were made in 2006. So people are paying over $200 for a 7-year-old console. I mean, you know there are reliability questions there, although they're normally pretty good. I mean, any console that's 7 years old, there's going to be a chance of a problem. But people are still paying that much for them. And I checked, the cheapest PlayStation you can get now, new, brand new, is $179. Now that's a 12GB one, but still, for like $200 or a bit more, you can get, I think, a 120GB PlayStation 3. I think it's like $250. Like, what? Sony, what are you doing? People are buying a non-backwards compatible one for $250. You could buy a backwards compatible 60GB one for that same price, maybe even a bit cheaper. You could definitely get an 80 gig one a little bit cheaper than that. They're losing out on so much money. And it's annoying because I know these consoles, you know, I've had a couple break. They're not going to be around forever. There's a dwindling supply of backwards compatible PlayStation 3s, and that upsets me because I really like them. But it should upset Sony too, because they're losing a ton of money. Because I guarantee you, I would have bought a new backwards compatible PlayStation 3, which would have given Sony hundreds of dollars, if it had been available, but it wasn't because Sony's being dumb. So, what Sony should do is they could release a brand new backwards compatible PlayStation 3. Give it like a 120GB hard drive, or 150, whatever. And they could probably charge $300 for it, maybe even $350, depending on the size of the hard drive. Because think about it, if people are willing to pay over $200, these are buy it now prices, for those of you familiar with eBay. But if people are willing to do buy it now for over $200 for a console that is, you know, 7+ years old, what would they be willing to pay for a brand new one with a larger hard drive? Most of the ones I saw on eBay had the original 60GB hard drive. So you bump that up to 150, you could probably charge $50 more for just that. Never mind, it's brand new. You could definitely get 300. And if Sony wanted to get 350, they'd probably get enough people to justify it. you know, especially if it's a limited time thing or something like that. But I cannot help but be amazed by how much Sony is not helping their fan base, not helping the sales of used games, which I know Sony doesn't make a ton of money from. But given that the PlayStation 4 is also not backwards compatible, I think it's a poor decision not to make another PlayStation 3. And even though I know it's very unlikely, I hold out a little bit of hope that they'll come to their senses and make a new backwards compatible PlayStation 3 towards the end of its life cycle. Because I know people would love it, and Sony would make money off of it. Two good reasons to do it. So anyway, that's about all I have to say about it. You can leave some comments about, whether you have a backwards compatible PlayStation 3, whether it's important to you. I know a lot of people don't really care. But if it's important to you, if you have one, if you think it's reliable, and what you'd be willing to pay for a new, brand new, and backwards compatible PlayStation 3.